Riders of Rohan, are you ready? Today we're going to learn about capital markets, maybe some O-Chem. Always hear people talk about capital markets, but I don't really know much about what that even means, what that entails. So we're going to watch a few videos, get a few different perspectives, try to get like a general idea of what this concept is. This guy, I just saw like the first couple seconds of this clip.
Hello, I'm
This dude's
Rohan.
name is...
I'm Daniela.
Wait, hold on.
This video,
Hello, I'm Rohan.
Rohan. I'm pretty sure it's Rohan, but we're gonna give him a pass on that, okay? No, I'm just kidding. I'm pretty sure he knows how to pronounce his own name. So we're gonna do that. Play some Zoids, of course.
Daniela. In this video, we'll break down a crucial part of a functioning modern economy, capital markets.
In order to understand what capital markets are, let's start by breaking the words up. For most of us, the word capital is represented by money, but it could also include other assets that are held by a person or organization.
Now, let's talk about markets. When you hear the word market, you probably think of a grocery store or perhaps online shopping, where products and services are bought and think of.
In order to understand what capital markets are, let's start by breaking the words up. For most of us, the word capital is represented by money, but it could also include other assets that are held by a person or organization.
Now, let's talk about markets. When you hear the word market, you probably think of a grocery store or perhaps online shopping, where products and services are bought and sold between buyers and sellers. Now, putting the words together, we can define capital markets as financial markets, where investment products such as stocks, bonds, currencies, and other financial assets are channeled between buyers and sellers.
As we will shortly discuss, capital markets include the stock market and the bond market. They help people with ideas for a business to become entrepreneurs and also help existing companies grow. In addition, they give individuals like you and me the opportunity to save and invest for our futures.
Capital markets are divided into two main categories, the primary market and the secondary market. When a company publicly sells new stocks or bonds for the first time, such as in an initial public offering or IPO, it does so in the primary capital market. The secondary market is where existing securities are traded among investors. This is most likely the market you see and hear about on the news, such as the Toronto Stock Exchange in Canada or the New York Stock Exchange in the US.
Naturally, you may be wondering what sort of investment products are bought and sold through these primary and secondary markets. While there are many securities to choose from, capital markets feature two main types of securities: equity securities and debt securities. Equity securities, which are also referred to as stocks, are traded on the stock market or stock exchange and are essentially ownership shares of a business or venture.
Debt securities, which are also referred to as bonds, are traded currencies and...
Alright. Sorry, I was distracted there. I'm gonna start this over.
or perhaps online shopping, where products and services are bought and sold between buyers and sellers. Now, putting the words together, we can define capital markets as financial markets, where investment products such as stocks, bonds, currencies, and other financial assets are channeled between buyers and sellers.
As we will shortly discuss, capital markets include the stock market and the bond market. They help people with ideas for a business to become entrepreneurs and also help existing companies grow. In addition, they give individuals like you and me the opportunity to save and invest for our futures.
Capital markets are divided into two main categories, the primary market and the secondary market. When a company publicly sells new stocks or bonds for the first time, such as in an initial public offering or IPO, it does so in the primary capital market. The secondary market is where existing securities are traded among investors. This is most likely the market you see and hear about on the news,
primary market's
such as
between
the
you and the
Toronto
government,
Stock
right?
Exchange in Canada
It's bonds.
or the New York Stock Exchange in the US.
Naturally, you may be wondering what sort of investment products are bought and sold through these primary and secondary markets. While there are many securities to choose from, capital markets feature two main types of securities: equity securities and debt securities. Equity securities, which are also referred to as stocks, are traded on the stock market or stock exchange and are
Greatest
essentially
enemy is
ownership
myself.
shares of a business or venture.
Debt securities, which are also referred to as bonds, are traded on the bond market.
Dude, what?
They essentially represent money that you will loan to a
I was
company.
gonna say I can't hit this
Think
guy.
of it like this.
You have to get so
Investors
close.
have money
Hitbox is so
that they
small.
would like to invest, hoping for it to grow, and companies need capital to run and expand their business. Stocks and bonds are purchased on the primary or secondary market. The company that issues the securities receives the money to finance operations and other initiatives. Without stock and bond markets, business owners would have fewer options to start a company or to expand their business.
Let's give you an example. Meet Sam. Sam is a social media influencer with a few million followers who has an idea for a new business
me?
called
No,
Active Threads, a custom tracksuit company.
Oh shit.
Sam has saved his money in the bank,
ran right into
earned
that, too.
interest, and used that to start his business. He has been selling tracksuits through his social media page, and boom,
Is Sam
they
Russian
are
by
a hit.
chance?
Sam has seen his orders grow exponentially, and now a large sportswear retailer wants to do a collaboration with Active Threads.
Sam now needs to purchase a facility and machinery to produce all the tracksuits, and needs to hire people to help produce, sell, and deliver the final products. There's just one small problem. Sam doesn't have the money to pay for all of this right now. This is where capital markets come in.
Sam has various types of funding that are available to him, but first he must consider what combination of debt and equity he will use to finance the operations and growth of Active Threads. This is known as the company's capital structure. Specifically, the capital structure
where
of
is
a
my
company
teammate at?
refers
What
to
the
the
hell?
composition of its long-term funding sources, including common and preferred stock, bonds, and
Oh
etc.
no. Damn it.
A company's capital structure is important because it can affect its ability to obtain financing as well as its overall financial health and performance.
Now that Sam has considered the capital structure of his company, he can think about the various ways to obtain funding in equity and bond markets. In the equity markets, Sam can take Active Threads public through an IPO or initial public offering. Unlike a loan, which Sam would have to repay, issuing an IPO will allow
So is the
investors
IPO
like his
considered
followers
primary
to
market?
buy a share of Sam's company and become partial owners.
As we previously mentioned, a company's capital structure can also consist of debt, so Sam may also issue bonds instead of stocks. This way, Sam will essentially obtain a loan from investors, which he will have to repay at a later date, in addition to making regular interest payments to the bondholders.
Now, say Sam wants his company to remain private. He can obtain the capital needed from private equity firms. Private equity refers to a type of investment in which wealthy investors pool their money together to buy ownership in private companies with the goal of generating a high rate of return on their investment. One of the key characteristics of private equity investments is that they are not traded on public stock exchanges, like the shares of publicly traded companies. This means that private equity investments are typically less liquid than public stocks. Or in other words, they can be more difficult to buy and sell.
The bottom line is that capital markets provide the essential funding to help entrepreneurs like Sam to start a business or expand a current one. And they also provide investment opportunities for people like you to plan for your future. Companies can raise the financial capital they need to grow by issuing equity and debt securities while simultaneously taking advantage of reduced risk and expenses associated with obtaining funding in stock and bond markets.
So, whether you'll have an innovative business idea one day or are looking to invest in your future goals right now, capital markets will be there to gear you up.
Hopefully, this video has been another helpful step for you in your education on investment.
Make sure to continue following along with our videos to learn more about investing.
Thanks for watching. Keep chasing those money gains.
Nice. Okay. I'll be honest, I didn't really pick up much from that video just because It's hard to focus on both at the same time.
Although modern-day trading and investing is mainly computerized, many people still associate the markets with the open outcry system and the traditional hustle and bustle of the New York Stock Exchange. Those days may seem like a distant past now, primitive in some ways, but even those more traditional approaches were an evolution from what the markets had started off as. So what was the first stock exchange? How was it formed and what was being traded? In this video, we're going to explore some of the history that has formed and shaped the very markets that we know and love today. Join us as we take a whistle-stop tour of the very first stock exchanges. Before any real stock exchange was built, some countries had their own kind of trading systems that worked in a similar way to an exchange. In the 1100s, France had the Courtiers d'Échange, which was a group of men that managed agricultural debts on behalf of banks. They're believed to be the very first brokers, since they traded these debts and regulated them all the way back 900 years ago. Most people think of Venice as the city of love, our Courtiers d'Échange of the very first stock exchanges. History that has formed and shaped the very markets that we know and love today. Join us as we take a whistle-stop tour of the very first stock exchanges. Before any real stock exchange was built, some countries had their own kind of trading systems that worked in a similar way to an exchange. In the 1100s, France had the Courtiers d'Échange, which was a group of men that managed agricultural debts on behalf of banks. They're believed to be the very first brokers, since they traded these debts and regulated them all the way back 900 years ago. Most people think of Venice as the city of love, with its network of canals and astonishing cultural treasures, an ideal place for a romantic weekend getaway. You may even think about the famous Shakespeare play, The Merchant of Venice, written in the 16th century. You maybe wouldn't associate it with the financial markets. But in fact, some 200 or 300 years before Shakespeare's masterpiece, merchants in Venice were trading government securities, all the way back in the 1300s. They would act as a sort of broker and would meet clients to provide them with all the information which would be written on a slate. This paved the way for merchants in nearby cities to start doing the same. Fast forward another 200 or so years, and still 70 years before Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice, to put the timeline into perspective, and we have the first stock exchange. This was documented to have been created in Antwerp, Belgium at around 1531. Before this, it was believed that innkeepers controlled the securities and trades, and it was a very respected job. One of these innkeepers was the Van der Beurs family, who ran the Terbeurs Inn in Bruges. Men would meet up to deal with government issues, businesses and debt, and would meet in the Terbeurs Inn, or in the square around it. The group was called the Bruges Bourse. This is believed to be the start of when they began calling stock exchanges bourses, named after the family.
No.
There were different houses for different countries, and they would go to each house to trade commodities. There was no actual stock in these stock exchanges. Instead, they dealt in promissory notes and bonds, similar to how we trade in the markets today. Moving on to the 1600s, lots of ship owners from different countries sent ships over to the east to trade or take valuable goods and bring them back to their home countries to trade. These were very dangerous trips for many reasons, including the turbulent waters and pirates. This meant it was a risk to the ship owners, as they would stand to lose a huge amount of money if their ship didn't make it back. So, to help decrease the risk of losing money, the ship owners would seek investors to financially back the boat and crew for that voyage. By doing this, the ship owner was distributing some of the risk and would therefore not lose as much if the ship fell victim to one of the many dangers during the trip. If the voyage was successful, the investor would get a percentage from the proceeds. Of course, this was a risky investment for the investors. If the ship didn't return, they would lose all the money they had invested. So, to reduce their own risk, they would invest in many different ships on many different voyages. A classic case of diversification, not putting all your eggs in one basket. In some cases, this would mean that even if just one ship came back, they would still make a return. They were taking a portfolio approach. A company was formed called the Dutch East India Company. The Dutch East India Company became the world's first publicly traded company in 1602. Instead of investing in each individual ship on different voyages, investors could buy shares in the company, meaning they were getting a stake in a whole load of ships instead. This meant the company could charge more for their shares and therefore had more money for even more ships and even more voyages. The investors could also potentially earn more through dividends in the company, rather than just receiving a percentage from each individual trip. Investors would receive their stocks on paper, and because of this, it meant they could either hang on to them and keep getting dividends, or they could be sold on to other investors for more money, potentially making them a profit on the asset. Many other countries began to do this with East Indian companies, including the Brits, who had the British East Indian Company. In England, investors used to go to coffee shops to buy and sell these paper stocks, since there was no physical stock exchange set up. People would have to track down the broker that they needed and try to make a deal. If you've ever had the problem of getting hold of your broker when you needed to speak to them the most, imagine having to track them down in person. Investors in the British East Indian Company started earning large dividends, which then allowed them to sell their shares onto other investors for a bigger profit. There were no regulations in place for the issuing or selling of shares at this time, so more companies started to pop up and follow in their footsteps. This is when the South Seas Company was born. They managed to sell all their shares before even making their first trip. People could see the huge amount of money that they had made from this and the luxury lifestyle they could afford as a result of that. And so, lo and behold, more companies started appearing as everyone wants to jump on the bandwagon. If this sounds similar to things like the dot-com bubble or the recent wave of ICOs, that's because it is. As the famous phrase says, there's nothing new under the sun. As more companies were established, a lot of these were blind shares, as people didn't even really know what they were buying, but decided to buy them anyway. In the end, the South Seas Company didn't make much profit and dividends weren't paid out. This caused the bubble to burst and a crash took place in England. This led to the issuing of shares being banned by the government, and that ban remained until 1825.
What shares?
Once again, sound similar to the ICO wave? So, that's a brief history of the first stock exchanges. The part I found most surprising and most interesting is how Venice was a hub of government securities all the way back in the 1300s. I'd like to know which part you found most interesting. Leave a comment below and let me know. And
every time they say that in these videos, it reminds me of Dora the Explorer. I used to have, I mean, I still do. I had younger cousins who used to watch that show.
Leave a comment below.
And I would like pop my head into like what the kids are up to and be like, oh, what are you guys up to?
See you in the next
and I just see Dora the Explorer, they're on some like quest or whatever, and they finish the quest. And she like turns to the audience, breaks the fourth wall, and she's like, what was your favorite part of the adventure? And all the kids who are like sitting around the TV, looking super intent, just stare at the TV and there's just silence for like 5 to 10 seconds while Dora the Explorer is waiting for a response. And then none comes, and then she just goes, oh, I thought that part was cool too, right? And I don't know, it just cracked me up because it was like, obviously they intended to utilize that portion of the show to like get the audience involved, and the audience would not get involved. Even though the kids were like eyes glued, you know, transfixed by the TV, so they were definitely engaged, but they were just like not, you know, they weren't going to be like active participants. It's kind of funny. Today's Columbus Day. I don't realize that. I just look at the calendar right now. Obviously, it's not a holiday that I think anyone really pays attention to or celebrates, but I just noticed it because it came up on the calendar. Okay. Alright, that was an okay one. Let's see. Netflix? I didn't realize Netflix has a YouTube channel. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but if you don't understand bonds, you don't understand money. Okay, provocative title. Let's hear him.
Worth over $100 trillion that impact your mortgage, your job prospects, your stock portfolio.
Okay, his audio is kind of low right out the gate, so I don't know. We're gonna have to question some things here. Turn the volume down on this game. This volume in the game's crazy. It's really just the music. I need to like config that from like the main menu. That crash noise.
The reality is,
The reality.
Don't know how this market works. Nope, it's not stocks. Nope, it's not crypto. It's actually the bond market, and it's the most important piece of the global financial system. So what is a bond? Imagine you're starting a business. You've got an amazing idea, you've got all the drive in the world to make it happen, but you just don't have the money. So you go to someone who does, and you borrow it. You make them a promise. You say, hey, I'll pay you back, and I'll give you a little extra on top. That little extra on top is called interest. That is the cost.
So we're talking about loans?
Someone else's money. $1 today.
Bonds the
is
same thing
worth
as
more than
loans? Is that what I'm
$1
understanding?
Because if you have $1 today, then you can use it to take advantage of opportunities as they
Tomorrow.
arise. When
right.
someone gives you that money now,
It's
they're
liquid.
giving up that potential. So they want to be compensated for that.
Yes.
Because otherwise they could have taken that same money and invested it in their own business or some other opportunity or even something like
Money is like,
now,
it's like
people
heat
and companies
in
often
thermodynamics.
borrow money, but so do governments.
It's like potential to work,
And when a
to do
company
work, you
or
know.
a government needs to borrow money, they do it by issuing bonds. That makes them the borrower
Hey,
or the
outta here.
issuer of the
My
bond.
cat.
And the investor is the lender. The US government is always spending money, whether it's on defense, roads, healthcare, or social security and beyond. And while a lot of that may sound altruistic, in reality, it's also strategic. Governments spend to stimulate productivity because productive citizens and businesses generate tax revenues. Most of a government's revenues are going to come from taxes. So in the United States in 2022, 54% came from personal income taxes, 30% came from payroll taxes, and 9% came from corporate taxes, while the rest was from excise taxes and things like park fees and so on. But here's the thing. The US government tends to spend a lot more than it collects in revenues. And that gap between what they collect and what they spend is called the budget deficit. And every time we run a deficit, we're adding to the total national debt, which is the amount that the government owes from all past borrowing. Deficits are annual, the total debt is cumulative. The last time the US government ran a budget surplus was in 2001, which I find surprising because it's a very different picture from where we sit today. In 2024, the US had a $1.8 trillion deficit. So, where does the extra money come from? The US Treasury borrows that money from the public by issuing bonds. As the government needs cash, the Treasury holds auctions, selling bonds to investors all over the world. And people tend to buy them. Banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and foreign governments, and also regular American citizens. Why do people show up at these auctions? Part of it is because US government bonds are considered one of the safest assets in the world. The day that the United States defaults on its debt would be a day where we probably have much bigger problems. So let's break down some of the terms around that. First, you have the principal, which is the amount being invested or the amount being borrowed. Then you have the coupon, which is the interest payment, or the percent that you're going to receive on that bond on a yearly basis. Then you have
God damn it.
which is when the loan is due. or
Okay.
how long the investor has to have their capital.
So a lot of this stuff I already know before, or knew already.
Which is the return that the investor gets.
I'm curious how this relates to. I think he's probably getting at the money supply.
Of the bond can change, which then affects the actual return. Bond prices go up and down, but the coupon, the dollar amount being paid on that bond, stays the same. And so because of that, the yield can move up or down based upon the price of the bond. If the price of the bond falls, then the yield rises. And if the price of the bond goes up, then the yield will decline. Let's say you have a $1,000 face value bond, and that bond pays 3%, which is $30 a year. A few months later, there are bonds that get issued at 5% for $1,000, so paying $50. The bond that you previously bought paying $30 is now less attractive on the secondary market. So the price may drop to, let's imagine, $900, but you're still getting that same $30 coupon on that bond. So now, if you take that $30 and you divide it by the current price of $900, now you're sitting at a yield of 3.33%. The opposite is true if rates were to fall. In that case, bond prices would go up and the yields would go down. So where do these market-based interest rates come from? Treasury auctions are one piece of that puzzle. The government sells bonds on a set schedule, weekly, monthly, depending upon the maturity of the bonds that they're selling. And the yield at auction depends upon how much demand there is at that auction for these bonds. This is called the primary market. When new treasury bonds are auctioned in the primary market, the yield at which they are sold becomes a benchmark, and investors in the secondary market look at this yield to reassess how some bonds are already in circulation. Investors are constantly buying and selling based on their expectations. Will the Fed hike or cut rates? Is the economy speeding up?
Instead of issuing bonds, the government should issue like
inflation in the future.
a U.S. federal trading cards, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh style.
Makes sense for them to lend their money out here. The result is that the market interest rates
Like you got the 5-year yield on
bond investors are demanding
has 500 HP.
It's all based on what they think the future holds. Now here's where things get interesting. Because if market rates go up, then the cost for the government to borrow also rises. Right now, the U.S. government has over $36 trillion in national debt that they have borrowed from the public over time. The key ratio to watch to get an understanding of what that debt really means is called debt to GDP. It's a way to look at how much we owe versus how much we produce. It's kind of like how much you have in your credit card balances versus how much is your annual income. This can kind of give you a better idea of how healthy that debt is or how likely the person is to be able to pay off that debt within a certain period of time. But what's even more important is at what rate are we paying interest on that debt? Because when rates go up, then the government has to spend more just to cover the interest payments. And that burden can go fast because right now a lot of government debt is in short-term treasury bills. These treasury bills are constantly resetting because they mature in time frames like 6 months, 12 months, and 18 months. So the government is constantly using these short-term treasuries to fund their borrowing. This process is called rolling over the debt. What the government would like to do, as we're seeing in the news, is to get rates lower so that instead of using these short-term treasury bills to fund their borrowing, they can then lock in a lower rate for longer-term bonds like 30-year or 10-year bonds. When you want to borrow over a longer period of time, you want the rates to be lower. When rates are high and you borrow in the long term, it's like setting in your mortgage rate at 7%. Here's something that we have to think about. Every 6 to 12 months or so, we have these short-term obligations that the government is then refinancing again. But also, you have older borrowing that was done in the past over, say, 10, 30-year periods that's also now constantly coming up. The government is taking what was once long-term debt and rolling it over into these short-term maturities. And as that happens, more and more of the total debt burden is reliant upon present-day market interest rates. If rates were to rise, then so will the cost of interest on the debt. And as that happens, it starts to crowd out the spending on other things like defense.
How topsy-turvy can the interest that we're carrying get it?
Or even
Can we get like 99 to 1 or something like that?
Find ways to fund these obligations. And that's why bond yields matter. Not only does it impact your mortgage, but it also shapes the financial future of entire countries. There's more to this that's going to impact your stock portfolio, so pay attention. When interest rates rise, government bonds essentially are offering a better return with no risk. Now, on the other hand, stocks are ownership in a company, not an obligation for a company or someone to pay you over a specific period of time. So if that business struggles, or even if the economy slows, then the price or the value of that stock can go down and even down to zero. Bonds are very different, especially U.S. Treasuries. It's the only way that you don't get paid is if the government defaults. Otherwise, you're going to get your money back with interest. So when Treasuries start offering 5% and stocks have an expected return, let's say of 6%, then investors are going to ask themselves, am I really going to take the risk of buying stock that's going to give me 6% when I can get a guaranteed 5% from the government? That interest rate for government bonds is called the risk-free rate, and the 1% spread between the expected value of the 6% from the stock market and the 5% from the government bond is called the equity risk premium. When bond yields rise, that premium shrinks. As that happens, investors start to rotate out of stocks or sell them. Now, that was the equity risk premium, which is the difference between the risk-free rate from the government and what investors would need from a stock in order to justify taking that extra risk. You have a similar concept.
Okay, I can't watch this and play this at the same time. We're just gonna focus on the Zoids then. Fuck them.
That's nothing to me. I just fight wars.
Imagine saying that. Imagine that thought going through your head and then you blurt it out. Might as well go higher volume then. God, the ally NPC behavior is just so bad. It just doesn't do anything. They just wander around.
Okay, understood. Grr.
Quite good for your ability.
Grr. There. There.
Just relax.
There. This is the way to operate. This is the way to operate Zoids.
Is it?
Just relax, yes. You see? I'm not qualified to be.
This is the way to operate Zoids.
Don't relax yet.
There.
Where the hell's my teammate?
There. Hi. There. There. There.
Don't relax yet.
That doesn't bother me. That's all this Zoid
Nice.
can do as well.
Jeez. You almost need some kind of background noise because like the audio, like the voice acting is just so terrible. And honestly, the music's good too, but it's a little much. It gets a little repetitive, you know? But what am I expecting from like a children's game from the GameCube era?
I'll show you the power.
But there's a reason I play this, which is that the gameplay's actually surprisingly fun, along with the customization. It'd be cool if they had a modern version of this game with a little bit tighter controls and whatnot, better production. Nothing fancy. Okay, I'm trying to save up. I think I want to actually pull the trigger on the Berserk Fury. It's either going to be the Berserk Fury or the Strum Tyrant. $120. Mobility is 93 to 84. Turning ability is 55 to... Whoa! The turning ability is way higher. Search ability. Radar scope. That's the only thing is that, I can't even view them, I don't think I have enough, yeah. The Strum Tyrant has like those claw things on the side, and then Berserk Fury has like the fan things up on the top. And I don't think you can like equip one or the other, I think. I don't think you're able to, I think you have to buy a Zoid with the thing that you want. But the turn ability is so much higher in the Strum Tyrant, makes me almost wanna... I don't know. Okay, who are we fighting? Okay, I think we got this. Let me see, I'm gonna switch.
Thank you, partner.
The other thing again, because like this was like obviously a game made to just sell toys and shit. The differences in like the different Zoids and then like the equipment that they have that you equip actually feels like it makes a difference. Like you feel the difference.
No way.
And how each one plays and everything. It's kind of cool. Shit! Shit!
I'm not defeated.
How did I beat her last time?
Unlucky.
This is the power!
God damn, she got me quickly. Okay, what did I use last time to defeat her? Is this battle 12 or battle 10?
Leave it to your sister.
I think the main thing is you can't be in front of her cannon, right? Did I have the ape last time? Was I beating her with the ape? Or did I have the command wolf? I don't remember. Let's give it a shot.
Thank you, partner. I can do it.
Can you really, Van?
I mean, right? My missiles are doing, like, they're hitting, but they're not doing a lot of damage. This is like a DMC combat cycle. Gotta wait for the area of effect attack, jump out of the way, dodge, get a few licks in. Oh shit! It's like a horse, don't get in back of it. Don't get in front of this thing at all. Okay, well I think I have the right idea down. The cannon on the Command Wolf does enough damage over time. I just hit hits, and I need to rotate. I need to just kind of rotate around her.
I'm not too good at battles.
She says that, and then she whoops my ass 2 times in a row. See, I don't want to spend money, because I feel like I could upgrade my characters a little bit to get more out of them, but no. It's just the NPC doesn't have good programming, so like, whenever I tell my teammate to do anything, they don't do anything. They're just wandering around in circles doing nothing. I wonder if the default programming is better to just kind of leave it alone.
I can do it!
Can you really, Van? Don't relax yet.
I can do it!
Yeah!
I'm not defeated, no way!
Show me
I
the
did all that to myself.
Whoosh.
I had a strategy going in, I did the exact opposite of it.
Unlucky!
Damn it. Alright.
This is the power.
What? This is the power. Wow.
I'll show you the power.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, partner!
Other thing too is, I feel like the AI in this game
I can do it!
Can you really?
automatically targets you. Like it has a preference for targeting your character versus your support character.
Give up!
I think this is the way, right? It's working. My teammate needs to stop running into him.
I can do it!
Can you really, Van? Oomph. Oomph.
Oh, dude.
I'm not defeated!
I ran into my own bombs. I did it to myself. User error every time.
This is the power.
Stop saying that. Oh my god. I need some kind of background noise. I can't do this. What are we listening to? What are we watching? I can't really follow this economic stuff right now. I need to like pay attention to one or the other.
Leave it to your sister.
Drama slop it is. Let's see, what do we got here? What the hell is this? Okay.
You wanna know how I got these scars?
In November 1992, at the West New York Children's Psychiatric Center, an assessment was published on a 7-year-old boy by the name of Andrew Ditch. Andrew, who had been admitted to the clinic after putting his fist through a window at school, was described as having poor self-esteem, impulsivity issues, and mild to moderate depression, reportedly owing to abusive behavior from an older half-brother. Despite writing a lengthy diagnosis list, the physician characterizes Andy's cognitive and behavioral abilities as mostly unremarkable for a boy of his age. This was one of the last times that Ditch would be described by anyone as unremarkable, and over the next 3 decades, he would work to cement his status as one of the most prolific deviants in
Gotta watch
internet
out for my own
history,
bombs.
projecting everything from family feuds to fetishes for online attention, while also spending years on a campaign trying to convince everyone in his life that he has autism, and fighting all of those who dare to doubt him. With behavior that was successfully pitiful, then repulsive, then
Okay, we're putting a dent in
but
her.
never conventional. This is
Oh,
Andrew
she's got my
Ditch,
freaking
the
thing
Diaper
already. Oh,
Diaries.
dude.
But before I go any further, today's video is
Diaper
brought to you
Diaries,
by
wow.
TurkeyTom.shop. We have this new Epic Gym t-shirt. All right, they're already almost gone, so if you want to pick it up, now's your last chance. It's a very epic gym shirt that I know all of you guys are going to be fiending for because, let's be honest, the average physique of a Turkey Tom viewer is just, I mean, you guys are strong, okay? You're spending all day watching YouTube. You're strong, and I'm strong. I'm not fat. And we also have these Stop Gooning hats in stock. All right, I've seen a lot of you guys out there gooning. I've seen the things you're doing. And frankly, because you watch my videos, I won't call you out. But given what you're doing, I have to disapprove strongly. On a serious note, though, I really appreciate everybody who has bought the merch in this drop and in the past because I put a lot of sponsor up and
Turkey Tom seems like a
Andrew would
like a
spend
funny
the
guy.
remainder of his winter at the facility before being discharged in March of 1993,
Do you think the rumors are
returning
true?
home and resuming his education.
I kinda
However,
think they are.
this was short-lived, as a few months later, he would be
all I'm gonna say.
readmitted once more after assaulting his older brother by the name of Joe. This time, the record would show an even more troublesome
Joe.
childhood for Ditch, whose mother, Janet, experienced multiple health complications during pregnancy, whose parents were struggling financially and were clashing over intrafamilial issues, who had experienced abuse from an early age, and whose attendance of schools and developmental programs would regularly end with reports and diagnoses. His parents claimed that Andrew's problem began around the age of 4, but it's not hard to see that many of
maybe I
the
should
probable causes were present in his early childhood, and to everyone's concern, he was not growing out of it. The referral documents no longer seem to view Andrew as merely another routine patient, with reports being placed on admission that they viewed him to be a risk to others and himself, with more psychological tests required due to primitive
Monkey
thinking.
guy,
The
you gotta get
analyzing
away from him.
physician
Stop
raises concerns
running right
over his
into him.
perception of his own actions, stating that he has a thinking style which brings psychotic process into question, but ultimately concluding that it was unclear at this stage whether this was really a form of psychosis. He would again spend a few months under hospital supervision before being released back into the world with a
What does
diagnosis,
support mean?
attending a different school that served children with special learning needs. This didn't really help though, as a month later, he would be readmitted after threatening to kill his mother in a series of dissociative episodes, after he claimed to see his half-brother firing a gun with his pants pulled down. This
What the
report,
fuck?
although not entirely negative about his nature, is the first where his delusional thinking pattern is mentioned with more certainty, with the doctor reporting that Andrew is delusional about his perpetrator, assumedly Michael, stalking him. With the history that he possesses, it's not a surprise that someone of that age might be struggling with delusions. But in the report, the doctor seems concerned that the parents are enabling these delusions, and amongst other things, this would require immediate treatment. Over the next few months, Ditch would go through multiple courses of therapy and interviews, which would result in a final diagnosis of 4 separate behavioral diagnoses, along with chronic asthma. These included PTSD,
Along with
which I
chronic
assume
asthma.
you're all familiar with, oppositional defiant disorder, which is often found in children who are openly hostile to authority figures, expressive language
was me.
disorder, which affects people who struggle to put their thoughts into words, and psychosocial stressors, a broader description of environmental factors that can cause emotional distress and fragility. In this case, his past trauma. Looking at Andrew's childhood is not my idea of a good time. The details are revealing, and you can see the roots of his toxic
Not
and
here for a long
self-destructive
time, here for a
behavior.
good time.
Unfortunately, all of this is relevant to what happens later in his life, and how he tries to rewrite his own documented history to justify his gross actions. This is the last time that I'll be able to remind you. Like the rest of us, Andrew is a human being. Unlike the rest of us, I'm not
debatable.
sure you'll be able to tell. A lot of Andrew's adolescence is riddled with continuous records of his trips into medical centers and mental hospitals for various reasons, many of which remain undisclosed. It's also highlighted by Andrew's own accounts of extremely unhinged behavior, such as poisoning his father's coffee with stool softener.
You know, there was
Goddamn.
one time Andy did, put Miralax. No, not Miralax. I don't remember what it was at the time. It was a stool softener in my dad's coffee.
Fucked him up that bad, huh? He doesn't even remember.
Or something like that, when he used to work nonstop.
As we'll later find out, I'd take everything Andrew says with a grain of salt, but it was clear that his behavior was not improving, and by April 2002, after a string of violent outbursts against his family, he wound up in enough trouble to find himself back where all of this started, the West New York Children's Psychiatric Center. Further assessments were carried out on him, and this time the reports were equally damning, emphasizing his pattern of mental, social, and sexual deviance, including an interest in
Bro, what are you
diapers. He was
doing?
discharged with an even longer list of mental illnesses. Psychologists draw parallels between his disposition and borderline, narcissistic, and antisocial personality disorder, which is commonly associated with psychopathic traits. He was eventually discharged in August, with the assessment concluding that he was ready due to his positive response to a structured environment, no signs of psychosis, presenting with articulate
God, am I
speech,
stuck in a
and
loop?
illustrating good judgment and insight that he must maintain appropriate behaviors in the community. However, many concerns were still harbored that
I'm
this was
stuck
a
in a
person
loop.
who was seriously unstable and unable to exist in a functioning society, with the report referencing his coercive, threatening, and manipulative nature, stating that he only became responsive to treatment
Oh my God,
when threatened
I'm
with
stuck.
legal detention. It was clear there was still the suspicion that Andrew was merely on his best behavior for his own selfish purposes. From this report, psychologists believe that Andrew knows how to behave well. It's more a case of his own will. Despite the reservations, though, he was released back into society once more to complete his education. And although there would still be reported altercations between him, his family, and his school, he remained out of trouble for the most part, moving between jobs at fast food chains and convenience stores. It wasn't exactly a life, but it
Dude,
was
I'm
lived.
getting my
The
shit
reason that he was
fucking pushed
dismissed
in,
from
holy
so
shit.
many jobs is somewhat unclear, but we do know he suffered a head injury in 2005 that he would later claim cost him his McDonald's job. In 2008, now a 23-year-old man, Ditch would have yet another psychiatric assessment.
Where's
with
my
the
teammate?
evaluating professional noting that he had already attempted to seek consultation
damn
at
it.
another clinic, but didn't like the doctor, who Andrew alleged did not want him to seek employment. In the interview with the doctor, he would refer to himself as suffering from schizoaffective disorder, bipolar, ADHD, Tourette's, OCD, and conduct disorder. Although the psychiatrist concurred with the conditions that had been documented before, they ruled out bipolar disorder and deferred any access to diagnoses, which concerned previous speculative conditions like borderline, narcissism, and ASPD. It was clear that Ditch was...
Let's see what this guy looks like. Andrew Ditch. This is him? Okay.
was on some sort of mission to have a label that he could understand himself by, but didn't always like the answers that certain doctors provided. I'm not entirely convinced by his allegations that the past doctor told him to stop seeking employment, nor am I by the allegation that this offended him so much that he just couldn't work with him. Receiving multiple opinions isn't a bad idea, but the doctor still hadn't said the magic word that Andy was after, that word being autism. Throughout the late 2000s, autism began to receive more acknowledgement in mainstream society and throughout the scientific world. It had already been experiencing an uptick in visibility and therefore was viewed as more common than it was
shooting at
originally
anybody.
thought. Now, for a lot of people who were children in the 80s and 90s, this meant that they had been overlooked for a diagnosis when there wasn't as much awareness of the condition. But Andrew Ditch had been through all the psychiatric institutes and had probably been evaluated for autism more than a couple times, even when it was not as widely acknowledged. Nevertheless, at a follow-up appointment the year after, a different doctor notes that Andrew was raising questions about the possibility of autism spectrum disorder, which he regards as interesting, before drawing attention to Ditch's history of violence, which included a court-mandated anger management course after assaulting his brother 2 years prior. It seemed that the doctor was one of many people who was skeptical of Andrew's honesty and his needs. This skepticism only heightened following his next appointment, where in a report, the physician sarcastically remarks that he, of course, lost the laboratory slip that was designed to measure his lithium level, and then agreed with Andrew's mother that he should move into supported
where's my teammate
housing,
at? What the
but
fuck?
understands Ditch has a habit of intentionally jeopardizing his applications, such as claiming he's inappropriately touched people, which tells you the sort of person we're dealing with here. He would rather fabricate allegations against himself than live independently. It should be clear by now that he wasn't exactly fiending for independence, but living with his parents wasn't going much better.
What are you
he
doing?
continued to have a strained relationship with them, with major outbursts, psychiatric
can't touch him.
emergencies, even calling 911 over food that he claimed was too cold. A brief moment of reflection in one of these reports has him stating that he might have overreacted, and that he hasn't been taking his medication due to concerns about his weight. In another one of these documents, it's reported that he denies he would ever hurt himself or his family, immediately after an incident where he swallowed pills and took a knife to his own wrist, and then called the police on his mother. This is one of the first times that we can see that Andrew's mother was advised to seek a restraining order against her son due to this pattern of behavior. As you'll also see, it's unlikely this advice was taken too readily.
Okay, it's polyethylene glycol 330/50 USP powder for oral solution. Huh. Wonderful. Does mom know about
Wonderful.
that? Yeah. Prescription laxative. Really?
It should be clear by now that Andrew Ditch isn't just a troubled person with anger issues.
Shit.
He's also just a pretty bad guy. He's manipulative, dishonest, abusive, and unable to take accountability for any of it. His intellectual disability isn't the cause of his intentions. It only makes his machinations easier to see through.
Damn.
But it was clear he was still capable of
barely
functioning
pulled that
in
out of my
society.
ass.
Case in point, this is the same year that after allegedly taking a course in Be Your Own IT a couple of years prior, he
Be
would
Your Own
launch the
IT?
business A Best PCs, a company specializing in PC repair and sales. He offered a free service, which was delivered through a forum, and a paid service through his website. It's not the most appealing branding, and I hope his computing knowledge is better than his graphic design, but the reviews were positive, even if they did all share the same questionable grammatical and typographical choices with Ditch's website. Birds of a feather, I guess. Genuine reviews were also positive, though, seemingly showing Andrew's ability to effectively perform a job and even operate a business. Around this time, he also set up a website to showcase his enthusiasm in meteorology called Andy's Weather Site, marketed as the all-you-need weather source, with forecasts twice a day. At the end of 2010, Ditch would set up a Facebook account to promote his business, providing the first record of his interaction with social media. Most of his activity revolved around his business, sports, and personal matters, even sharing a photo of himself looking very dapper, or should I say diaper. That's the comedy you pay for on the Turkey Tom YouTube channel. He'd post photos of the weather, his family, and his dog. It all seemed like a relatively regular Facebook feed, but as time went on, it began to look a little more interesting. On the 10th of March, he posted about how the pain he had been experiencing had become so excruciating that he was going to miss physical therapy. He had been posting about struggling with pain in the days leading up to this, but this one was curious in that he highlights that he can't pull down his pants to go to the bathroom, which is definitely more information than I'm sure anyone on his Facebook feed wanted to know. On the 15th of March 2011, following the Japan earthquake and tsunami, Andrew shared his obligatory thoughts and prayers with the timeline, attracting a comment comes from one account by the name of Michael Ditch.
Absolutely wow, devastating.
This told us two things: that Andrew's excellent grasp of the English language ran in the family, and that despite their troubled history, these two were still in contact, which may raise a few eyebrows. Shortly after, in April, Andrew would make a post lamenting that he was barred from a local Wendy's for making a mess in their lobby. What kind of mess? We can't be sure, but a couple months later, the story has changed significantly. In two separate posts, now they were merely complaining about the time it took for a fish sandwich to arrive, unless he was banned from two separate Wendy's, which is also believable. In July, he puts out a message expressing anger towards people who slander others, stating that they will be punished. After this, his Facebook returned to normal, but his life definitely did not. In December, he was referred again for a psychiatric assessment after he ended up in a physical fight with his brother, argued with his father, Thomas, over a vacuum cleaner, and then threatened to cut his mother's hands off. He denies this and says he's actually doing very well outside of the occasional argument. His mom, on the other hand, says that he's becoming increasingly demanding and threatening, not taking his medication, and is disruptive around the house. When asked if she would be willing to take him back, she is reported to have become angry and slammed down the phone. Don't be surprised if you're feeling a bit of deja vu. It won't be the last time. After maintaining a relatively low online profile,
I figured out how to beat him. It's that missile that I have on my back, but
where he would share the projects that he was
he does so much damage with that front head laser.
From A-Best PCs here. We're going to show you how to do a simple hard drive or hardware upgrade on a laptop.
In these videos, Andrew sounds like a relatively well-adjusted human being who is knowledgeable on his subject area. If you didn't know him from anywhere else, he'd seem like your perfectly average part-time YouTuber. He also provided hygiene tips in the comments section, reminding people to wash their hands after handling anything with oil. He would upload multiple videos on this channel over the next couple of years, all of which seemed inoffensive in their content, and he would also set up other socials for his business, including a Twitter and LinkedIn, spotlighting his experience in his field. But with his discovery of online communities, he began to indulge his more perverse and volatile side. In 2014, he set up an account on adisc.org, a self-proclaimed AB/DL/IC community, with the letters standing for adult baby diaper lover incontinent. On his account, he classifies himself as the latter two. Now, if you're into this stuff, you don't normally want to make it known, but in this case, Ditch makes it a bit hard to ignore by naming the account A Best PCs, which is an unorthodox way to court new clients. Around this time, he also set up a Google account, which wouldn't see too much activity on it at first, other than two long-winded reviews on a local Wendy's and Tim Hortons. The Wendy's review has since been removed, but in it, he states that he is a business owner, names and shames multiple staff members that he dislikes, accuses them of workplace discrimination, multiple health violations, wrongful termination, and of calling the police on him after he'd had a surgery and his diabetic mother who was experiencing hypoglycemia when they were attempting to dine there. The Wendy's in reference is a branch on Yonge Street in Tonawanda, and this is likely the same Wendy's he's referring to in his Facebook post, as Collin Boulevard is at the interchange that you would turn off for that Wendy's. The Wendy's that he initially admitted to making a mess at, which seems slightly difficult to do if you were ejected before you could even order. The negative review on Tim Hortons in New York is equally amusing, making a variety of allegations against the staff. Pointing towards his experience as a business owner again, he shares an experience where he ordered a steak, egg, and cheese on a jalapeno beagle. I guess that's a buffalo special. His order was missing the steak, his Diet Pepsi was half full, it looks like someone spat on his brother's sandwich, and took a bite out of a cinnamon roll. It's a cartoonishly awful experience.
How am I supposed to eat this pizza without my tray?
But what reason would Andy have to lie about this? Well, the answer is at the end of the review. They didn't hire him. The reason being that he is food safety oriented and customer friendly, something that the staff at Tim Hortons are not. But if he was a successful business owner, why was he still mad at Wendy's 4 years later and applying to work at Tim Hortons? Well, outside of him receiving some clients, there was no evidence that that this business was actually profitable or even an actually registered business. It was also apparent that Andrew is just a very vindictive and petty person, and if he feels wronged, he will hold a grudge for as long as is convenient for him. And he has no real limit for how far he'll go. Whether that's turning up to a fast food restaurant, making a mess, and then leaving a review 4 years later claiming that he was actually the one who was mistreated. Most people move on from life's inconveniences and difficulties. Andrew, on the other hand, uses it to fuel his victim complex, despite often perpetuating these situations. Even if he was operating a business, he was clearly still a deeply disturbed person and had no interest in changing. In fact, he was only interested in justifications to continue behaving this way.
Relatable.
Around 2009, he had expressed an interest in being diagnosed with autism. And at
He
this
expressed
point,
an interest.
the
Hey,
consulting doctor
might
did
you
not seem
diagnose me with
particularly
autism?
curious about pursuing this any further. But in March 2016, he created an account on the MedHelp forums, a discussion board that allows for medical professionals and community members to provide help to people in addressing their individual health concerns. Ditch's biography on this website states that he has received several differing and incorrect opinions from doctors, but was recently diagnosed with autism and related issues. He also shares that he is struggling with his weight, incontinence, that he is pre-diabetic, suffers from anxiety, anger issues, and needs to have a set schedule. This is the first time on record that he appears to claim that he's received a formal diagnosis of autism, and in the community's forum, he elaborates on this, stating that it is a recent development, that he struggles with loud and unpredictable sounds, and with crowded areas and events to the point where he needs someone to guide him out. He says he takes jokes literally, struggles with eye contact, and sometimes flaps his arms when he becomes excited or bored. Now, these are all possible manifestations of autism, but there's also a lot of discussion about other symptoms that don't seem particularly connected. He talks about struggling with spelling and reading, but the one that stands out the most is that he says he thinks he has sensory issues as he feels more comfortable wearing a diaper as it relaxes him and keeps him dry and contained. Now, I'm no high authority on autism, but I don't think that Andrew can really associate all of these behaviors with autism. I'm aware it's different strokes for different folks, but there's a word for people who like to wear diapers, and it's not autistic. In this post, he also asks why a well-respected neurologist, someone who treats conditions of the nervous system, did not recognize he had autism. He complains about being treated poorly at Wendy's, again, talks about his time at McDonald's, and claims that he suffered a brain injury that caused him to lose his job, not mentioning that he actually worked at Wendy's immediately after McDonald's. He asks the forum if he has autism or Asperger's, despite Asperger's being phased out of formal diagnoses a few years prior before this post, with it being merged into a broader recognition of the condition, something you think whoever diagnosed him would have told him. He also asks the forum for advice on going through the higher education system, describing himself as very smart and questioning whether his chronic shoulder pain could actually be worsened by his autism, before abruptly ending the post. This post did not receive any responses, probably because of Ditch's weird fixation on particular subjects and his tendency to talk at length about himself. He laundry lists his symptoms like he'd just read the Wikipedia page and is merely seeking validation from those in the forum, who are probably familiar with the kind of attention-seeking behavior that he's exhibiting. Unable to set up his community there, 1 year later, he launches the Abled, Disabled, and Yet Incontinent support group, and says that he is here to provide help and advice to those struggling with incontinence.
Oh, I believe I should have unlocked a bunch of Zoids because I beat the battle mode with the characters from the Chaotic Century or whatever. So let's see, is there anything new in here? I feel like this one's new. Gadget list the Gigas was there before Mariner. This one's new now. I feel like that's a lot more Saber fangs than I had before. Canon S. What is that? Oh shit, thing's cool. Look at that. That's shit. But the question is, I was debating that or the Strum Tyrant. So let's play a few more rounds, make a few more, make a little bit more money.
Including advice for children, which is like putting the village gooner in charge of sex ed. He also adds that this time, this is not related to his autism, which he will delve into in his next blog. This post also received no interaction, likely because if people are struggling with incontinence, they're probably going to see a professional rather than the local diaper guy. Nevertheless, if a psychologist has diagnosed him with autism, who am I, a humble YouTuber, to question such qualifications? Well, this is where it becomes interesting. In August 2017, Andrew had an appointment with a neuropsychologist, Dr. Santa Maria, likely being referred by his general practitioner, who possibly referred him due to the alleged diagnosis. However, this appointment
these don't do much damage and they seem medium range, like they won't really hit
of evidence of autism. And in fact, his condition was more indicative of schizoaffective disorder. This was not what Andrew wanted to hear, and as we know by now, if Andrew doesn't have his way, he won't let up until he does. So, after being ignored on online forums, he decided to take his crusade to YouTube, posting a 44-minute video on the platform where he, again, shares his life story, making sure to mention autism in the first 10 seconds.
Hey guys, I'm Andy here, and a couple things that you may not know about me so much. One is I was recently diagnosed with autism by a doctor that I been seeing for a while now, and he recently just diagnosed me with it.
In fact, he wastes no time explaining the reason that he's making the video is because he has a friend who doesn't believe he has autism because Andrew can talk to other people, whereas certain autistic people cannot.
The one thing I am creating this video for is because of this person, friend of mine, who I hope he's considered as a friend of mine. He actually tells me I don't have it because he compares him or me.
I like how he says, "I hope he's a friend of mine."
Other people who he knows that cannot talk. Now, I'm not mentioning any names here, but you know, I just feel kind of uncomfortable that people just don't understand and what it is.
Andrew makes the point that you can't just boil autism down to certain symptoms exhibited by people before boiling down autism to certain symptoms exhibited by him.
But basically, I gotta stop and think for what I say at some point, just to keep on topic. You may not be able to see my hands here, but they're flapping a little bit there when I was talking, when I was getting frustrated with myself there. I don't know if you saw that, but you could probably see my hand go like that every so often. I don't know. I don't like loud noises, like thunder, loud music. And to be honest with you, my counselor has suggested buying a good pair of headphones. Another thing I would have problems with understanding jokes or sarcasm, and that's the biggest thing I have problems with. And you know, being able to make friends comes easy to me, or easier than keeping a friend, should I say? And that's the other thing that bothers me. I have, you know, I'm happy being single, but I'm also open to having a friend, you know, to help me out with, you know, being in love with me or
having a friend,
or have a family with me. That is called empathy.
You have friends. You have a family with your friends.
That's what I have a huge problem with. Feeling other people's feelings and emotions. Or understanding
like you can't understand them.
Other people's emotions. It's very hard to be that way. But all these are basically autistic, you know, symptoms.
Most of the video is Andrew ranting about why he has autism, listing off all the knowledge he has on the matter, and even letting it slip that he's been doing some research into the condition itself.
the biggest problem I have is the arm flapping and arm movement, and this movement of my my fingers or my legs, where I constantly gotta move, which also could be ADHD.
Oh, he walked right into it, didn't he?
From what I've done research on, is more autism type of symptom. From what my doctor said, autism is a spectrum of disorders. From what I've learned, basically from my doctor, my counselor, the internet, the YouTube videos, the extensive research that me and my parents have done, it's a spectrum of disorders.
He goes on this tangent about how he was very smart and that he was one of the best performing students in his classes.
Sounds like
the
Donald Trump.
For this tangent is to
Maybe
bust
Donald
the
Trump's
alleged
autistic.
stereotype that
Maybe that's why he's
autistic
obsessed
people
with
have low
vaccines.
intelligence, but is clearly just used here as a self-serving mechanism for Ditch to boast about his academic achievements, which are all from at least 15 years ago.
Not to say that I'm dumb or anything. When I was in school, I was one of the smartest kids in my school.
Not to say you were dumb in school, you were one of the smartest kids. Okay.
For learning, the science, the history. My
to learn the science.
Class, on my senior year, I would actually have to teach the class because I knew more.
Andrew, can you actually teach the class? I'm gonna
that January I took the test, and I ended up passing it on the first try with a very high mark. I don't remember exactly what the score was. I think it was I was in the mid 80s. And here I didn't learn half of this math stuff. But
he just knew it in his body.
Few people that passed it. But in New York State, I was one of the few students who actually passed a German proficiency test in the New York State Regents requirements. And my German teacher actually said he would never pass it either. He said it was a really tough test.
It's clear that Andrew has an image in his head of how he wants to be perceived as this high-functioning autistic person, which is probably the reason why he was asking in the forums if he had Asperger's, the Rain Man of cyberspace.
There's times I have trouble remembering what I was going to say in the middle of a conversation. Like there's time I would say, "Oh, I didn't say that, but I was thinking this." It's weird because people make fun of me for that. Basically I have a brain fart is what I call it.
Ah, yes. The Andrew Ditch trademarked brain farts. Andy, that's not an autistic thing. Everyone does that.
Another thing I have problems with, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, and I feel very uncomfortable about talking about this.
As you'll soon find out, it wouldn't be an Andrew Ditch video without an explicit mention of his favorite topic, his bowel movements.
It's common for people with autism to have problems even with incontinence, even with as an adulthood. It is what it is, and I'm not comfortable.
I didn't know Liam
Neeson
had autism.
But I'm also not shy about it either. Gosh, I want to say, I was in and out of diapers all my life. I had professionals counselors that thought I was, doing it on purpose to get attention. What 12-year-old wanted to be wet? Have wet pants or wet bed? That's a question I still can't answer to this day. Why that counselor would even think about doing that.
This time, Andrew ties his incontinence more directly with autism. And although it is true that incontinence is more common in autistic people than the general population, I think it's important to acknowledge that it's a very broad term for bladder and bowel dysfunction. A lot of non-autistic people experience it, and it often doesn't result in people wearing diapers, or at least talking about doing so at length in a YouTube video. But you have to remember who you're dealing with here.
I had all the classic signs of autism, and yet these doctors never saw autism in me. Even when I couldn't speak, even when I couldn't get dressed on my own, even when I couldn't, ride a bike, the way I sing and talk, I can't hold a tune when I sing.
He then reverts to expressing frustration about how it took doctors 32 years to diagnose him with autism, despite his struggles to dress himself, ride a bike, and sing, which are all telltale signs according to him.
The one thing for people with autism, and that really helps me cope with my symptoms, whether temper tantrums or meltdowns or whatever you want to call them, headphones.
Okay.
Fidget spinner. Being alone helps me.
What does he do? So he's like having an argument with somebody and just throws his headphones on? That'd be base to have that as as an excuse. Be like, you know what?
is people ignoring me.
Even
I have
if
a
he
condition.
wasn't
I don't want to
compulsive
talk to you
liar
right now.
and
Fuck off.
making this video as a response to his psychologist diagnosis, what would this video tell the average person? Even if he was autistic, he's not going to find community by talking about why he's autistic for nearly 45 minutes. Very few people are like that, and those who are would rather be talking themselves. Who was he showing this to?
I hope this video helps people understand that doesn't mean I can talk, doesn't mean I can't talk, or someone else can't talk, rather. Doesn't mean the person who talks like me, doesn't mean I don't have autism. And that's what I'm trying to get at with people. There are certain people that just don't understand the symptoms of it.
Perhaps it was his psychiatrist, because less than a month later, his psychiatrist, Dr. Richard Wolin, would change the psychologist's diagnosis from schizoaffective disorder to ASD. This is the same doctor who Andrew had brought up his condition to in 2009, so it's very possible that the physician could no longer be bothered to deal with Ditch's bullshit and just relented. So finally, Andrew had exactly what he wanted, an autism diagnosis. He could embrace all the wondrous benefits that an autism diagnosis provided, which included eating out at autism-friendly restaurants, running autism-friendly weather forecasts, uploading autism-friendly content on his channel.
Hello guys, I'm Andrew from ABestPCs. Thank you for watching my videos. Take time and subscribe to my YouTube channel and my Tech Times newsletter.
Going to autism-friendly rock concerts, and visits to autism-friendly medical centers, this time because he was feeling depressed. Nothing came of this appointment, although it did give his parents another chance to highlight that he was verbally abusive. However, this utopia would be disrupted again in November 2018, when he had a second assessment with the neuropsychologist who had evaluated him the year before. With the support of his general practitioner, he may have expected less resistance from the physician, but this doctor reaffirms his previous diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder and rules out autism spectrum disorder. In this report, the doctor notes that Andrew seems very fixated on receiving a diagnosis, and that he has researched buzzwords and symptoms to bring up in the appointment. The doctor refers to his previous report and the evidence of thought disturbance and delusions which are not characteristics of autism. It's also apparent that from reading the report, the doctor is very hesitant to change his opinion as he's aware of Andrew's agenda. And even if there was the possibility that Andrew was autistic, his intentions of acquiring a diagnosis make it impossible to actually provide a proper evaluation, noting his careful responses in the examination data and apologizing for stimming and flapping throughout the day, representing Andrew Ditch's tokenized perception of autism. If he was as smart as he said he would have been able to present himself with a hint of subtlety. Instead, he was leaving the clinic with yet another negative result. But how was he going to deal with this news the second time around?
Janet stated that her son got in her face and was screaming at her.
Not very well, with his behavior spiraling rapidly to the point where, at midnight on November 18th, the police would be called to his address, where they would find Andrew's mother, Janet, in a frightened state, who subsequently shared that Andrew had accosted her, became extremely aggressive, and screamed at her. Andrew did not challenge the notion that he had what was described as a meltdown, but he did deny screaming or entering his mother's personal space. At the time, his mother declined to press charges, but his behavior didn't improve, and a week later, Andrew was admitted to the Erie County Medical Center after threatening to take his own life. However, once arriving, he denies any of this and instead claims that his father was making threats the previous night, but now he just wants to go home because it's too loud. In this report, the nurse practitioner calls Andrew a poor historian, describing him as demanding, manipulative, and threatening when observing him on a phone call with his mother. The nurse also states that Andrew called the police while there, stating his needs were not met, and stated his intention to sue all of the doctors in the hospital for not providing him with his medication. The nurse also reports that he was complaining he couldn't stand due to knee pain, but notes that he was walking fine earlier on in the day. So you can probably guess where this is leading. What's even more telling is the reports of the interviews with his parents, who state that he has been seeking an autism diagnosis while researching and faking these symptoms, with the schizoaffective diagnosis making him very angry. Andrew had since been threatening everyone in his life, including police officers, and once he was detained, he he continued to make these threats. In their mind, because he wanted control. In other details, Andrew's parents allege that he has called the police over 400 times throughout the year, often from the slightest inconveniences, and that he repeatedly makes false accusations of abuse despite being both verbally and physically abusive himself. They state that they threw him out 14 years ago after he assaulted his mother and brother, but he kept breaking into their house until they gave up on kicking him out. They refer to Andrew's previous jobs and housing as evidence that he is more than capable of being independent, but chooses not to, expecting his parents to cater to his every need, and alleging that he is faking incontinence and has been intentionally wetting and soiling himself throughout the week. This appeared to be the breaking point for Janet and Thomas, who state they are considering orders of protection, something that has been considered many times in the past. But who knows? Maybe this time they actually mean it. In a psychiatrist report from this time as well, Andrew is reported to have his disposition change rapidly from cooperative to demanding, expecting the staff at the hospital to change his diaper, likely related to his claims of being unable to move.
God damn, usually that's a joke when you tell someone, oh, you're acting like a baby, you need someone to change your diaper, but he actually asked people to change his diaper.
Has refused to do, all while continuing to threaten lawsuits and demanding to call the chief admin. The psychiatrist clearly does not want to keep Andrew here and references his previous living autonomy as a reason to release him to a shelter. 2 days later, he retaliated against his family by having his father arrested for an altercation earlier on in the year where he made threats towards Andrew after Andrew ate an entire meatloaf. After this, his mother decided to go ahead and press charges for the incident 10 days prior, with both Andrew and his father Tom being taken in by law enforcement.
Thomas was then booked on single charge of harassment, second degree, and held in the to see judge on 11/28.
Is this him trying to do his best, like, Chris Chan impression, or what?
Back to the hospital after an incident where he banged his head against a wall as he
I thought he was going to say he banged
His
somebody.
autism is repeatedly referred to in these documents, likely because of his own repeated references to it. And here, the alleged autism presents as a hindrance to a planned MRI scan. But shortly after this, he was discharged. It seemed like Andrew's failure to acquire an autism diagnosis had pushed him over the edge, and he would go to whatever ends to have his way, even if it meant harassing his own parents. It is completely fair to feel sympathy towards them after the ordeal that he had put them through. But at this point, they had to draw a line and set an example. If Andrew continued to live with his parents, who knew what could happen?
Well, what I have an issue with is every single time I walk in this door, I'm being told that I'm going to be sued and my job's going to be taken away, and he's pointing a camera in my face. It's getting ridiculous.
I did not hear that.
It was clear by now that all of the involved authorities were growing sick and tired of Andrew's shtick, and nobody really wanted to deal with him. In February 2019, he was referred back to the Erie County Medical Center after threatening to take his own life again. This time, he attempts the charm offensive with the reporting doctor, who reports Ditch to be pleasant, calm, and cooperative. Ditch then leverages this to his advantage, sharing that he'd rather his parents not be contacted, as he claims that his father verbally abuses him and his brother. He reports the arrest, but doesn't elaborate on any details, just stating it was due to a meltdown and that he couldn't remember exactly what happened, but that he did appreciate the structure and care the jail provided him, which makes you wonder if they changed his diapers. It's notable here that, again, he has told interviewing doctors that he has autism, which seems to be a repeating theme when he expects extra care. Following further interview and consultation of patient files, they discover that Ditch does not have a positive diagnosis for autism from a neuropsychologist, and he disagrees with this. He expresses the desire to live in a group home where he can have his needs taken care of on a 24/7 basis, and you can guess what that
sell
would
my iron
entail.
column.
Instead of consulting his parents this time around, they speak to someone by the name of Diane, who is his father's sister. Diane is disabled and had been an advocate for Andrew in the past. It's unclear how much she was involved in her nephew's life, but she had vouched for him in past exchanges with law enforcement.
Every autistic person is different. When I go to court, when I hear him, he's not telling you everything. He doesn't communicate well.
He doesn't communicate well? Are you kidding me?
No.
Are you kidding? He's one of the best communicating autistic people I've ever met.
In this document, she corroborated Andrew's claims that he had been physically and verbally abused by his family. She also claims she has heard and seen the recordings of evidence that support this and has even bared witness to these incidents. She reports that he is receiving support to find new housing, but it's not moving very quickly and that she feels bad she can't do more. With Andrew clearly winning over these practitioners and Diane's testimony speaking to repeated verbal and physical abuse, the individual writing up this account states that he strongly believes Ditch has autism based on his observations. In spite of this more sympathetic view towards Andrew, a conversation with the lawyer advises the physician that the situation is sensitive, and the general practitioner advises against any expeditious family reunion. He was released to emergency housing in the local area after his family refused to house him. A few days after this, he was given another mental health assessment, which doesn't reveal too much that we don't know already. Some seem more skeptical towards him, while others express some form of sympathy. But a psychiatrist's note is probably the most interesting piece of information here. In this summation, the psychiatrist writes that his family have infantilized him, despite the fact that he seems capable of some form of independence. This contrast is highlighted especially with Ditch's claims of incontinence, which seem incompatible with his ability to otherwise perform everyday tasks. It seems that anyone who had known him for a prolonged period of time were familiar with his ability to be independent and self-sufficient. So they were confused by this pattern of regression that he appeared to be demonstrating.
Oh, wait!
Later, Andrew found...
I'm so sorry. Why did I just forget that? Didn't he have a thing? Didn't he have a website that was like fetishizing that kind of thing? So he gets off to it? Am I getting that right?
Again, this time for the charge of second-degree coercion. The report also notes that diagnoses submitted are contradictory, likely referring to the persistent discourse over his autism diagnosis. Over the next month, caseworkers continued their attempts to find him supported housing. However, when the caseworkers needed to acquire what they say is a stability statement, the psychiatrist at the Erie County Holding Center, which is where Andrew was incarcerated at the time, would not sign off on such a statement because they didn't believe that he had an SPMI, or a severe and persistent mental illness. The agency at this point disengages with their search and hands the responsibility over to the holding center, who released Andrew to other accommodations. At this time, Andrew decides to share his grievances on his meteorology account on Facebook. It's his only Facebook account that's remained active over the past few years, but anybody who did see this post would probably be wondering why the account was breaking character. In this statement, Andrew reasserts that he has autism and sensory problems, and that he is now in a
so many
homeless
weapons.
hotel. You'd think that this is some kind of cry for help, but actually in this post, Ditch says that he's doing better, because the Erie County Holding Center is helping him out with his meltdown coping skills. So what is the point of this post? Well, it's for Andrew to yap about all of his autistic traits again, and to mention that he had another headbanging meltdown on April 8th. Which doesn't make it sound like he's doing too well. I wonder how thankful he would be if he realized that the holding center's skepticism towards his conditions was preventing him from entering supported housing. Immediately after this, he would also put out a tornado warning for all of his Texan followers. Thank you, Andrew.
That is absolutely good!
Whoa, what the
However,
fuck is going on?
It seems that this improvement didn't last after he was readmitted following another mental health break.
What are you gonna do? Lock me in the loony bin? I'm already here!
Here, he was addressed by another doctor who had previously advocated for an autism diagnosis for him, and did so again. However, following a neuropsychological consultation, this diagnosis once again had doubt cast upon it. This time, when contacting his Aunt Diane, she declined to vouch for his character, instead calling him a pathological liar, and when she was attempting to answer questions related to his behavior, she said she could not because she simply did not know him well enough. The evaluating doctor agreed with other reports that Ditch appeared to be exaggerating his conditions, and that Andrew's confidence in the symptoms actually prevents a clear diagnosis. And although he can't rule anything out, he also can't confirm it either. Andrew, as always, did not take this well, and a few days later, reports indicate he was again under arrest, this time for destruction of his parents' property, implying that he may have attempted to confront them.
We have to stop this repetitive calling everybody when you don't get what you need. We need what you think you need. You are able to live independently.
Oh, I am.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm allowed to shop on my own with no problem. Okay.
So listen, let me finish.
Okay.
You're sitting here with a laptop and what is
this? The Katy Perry in the background.
A tablet and a cell phone.
Have California girls
I
playing?
would be willing to bet that if you pull up the search history on your phone, there's all
A lot
kinds
of
of
porn.
things. You're able to maneuver Uber. I can't even maneuver Uber.
You're able to maneuver Uber.
Following this stint in jail, he was once again released for further examination, where an interview with his care coordinator reveals his parents have taken out an order of protection against him, in this case preventing Andrew from taking part in offensive conduct. She also seems unconvinced by Ditch's behavior, stating that despite being tech-savvy, he claims to be unable to set an alarm to remind himself to take medication and uses, quote, excuses such as, I won't hear the alarm. He was discharged to a motel, but wouldn't pay them.
Fuck you, pay me.
And he had been banned from the local homeless shelter for defecating on the floor.
Goddamn!
Bombs away, boys, bitch!
The care coordinator finishes on the note that he alienates anyone who tries to help him. It seems the more time people spend around Andrew, the more they despise him, which is not a good sign.
You've already been tested for autism.
I have?
Yes.
Oh, I have.
And you do not have autism, Andrew.
Okay.
That is what the results came back as. You do not have autism.
Whatever it is, then why do I have sensory problems? Why?
I don't know why you have sensory problems.
No, you do know.
No, I don't, because I'm not a medical professional. Regardless of what the issues you have, it does not.
He doesn't have any
say
issues.
that
He just
those issues are preventing you
he
from
wants an
living on
excuse.
your own.
By now, everyone from psychiatrists to caseworkers had tried to help Andrew back on his feet. He was extremely desperate to find himself in a group home, but he was unable to receive endorsement from the authority figures which would enable him to do so. It was pretty clear from the evidence and interviews that Andrew was able to live independently. He was just actively choosing not to, and that a group home would just indulge that nature rather than actually helping him manage it. Professionals did not feel comfortable supporting him, but when faced with the ultimatum, instead of deciding to live on his own, Andrew concluded that the only solution was to regress further, because surely that would make people believe him.
Guys, this is my room.
With his housing situation in jeopardy, Andrew had very little option but to make his case online again, this time uploading a video to his personal channel, Andrew Ditch. He posted it from his motel and made sure to emphasize his supposed autistic traits, but this time with a slightly different delivery.
Everything everywhere. I don't know how to do. I'm struggle, guys. I'm struggle. I just looking for idea help. Andy looking for idea help. It's really struggle.
This is not behavior that I, as a viewer, or any of the professionals have been acquainted with in the past. He seems to be mimicking the speech of a young child in distress. He's made a mess in his room, and he shares the news with his audience that he is struggling.
And then this garbage, that's not garbage, it's the stuff I hit can't put away. I don't know.
Pretending really badly.
Oh, and I just realized there's garbage in.
I'm a baby. I can't do anything. No.
Look at fridge thingy. I mean, Andy struggle, he says,
pointing towards a loaded fridge. He thinks that being unable to string together basic sentences, speaking about himself in the third person, and using a childlike cadence is his struggle.
There's my weather radio there. I love
radios
that have weather radio alert thingy. But this is that's my white noise maker. I can do it different.
He's not even good at it.
Sounds I can turn different sounds up. This one bothers me because it's sensitive to thunder. Sensitive to thunder.
He has some items he's interested in all set up and organized, such as his weather radio, his oil diffuser, and his Wi-Fi, which he boasts that he can use to control the lighting in his room. But when it comes to matters that Andrew would rather be helpless at, such as cleaning himself or his room,
that's what
he
it is. There it is, right
extremely
there.
flustered and upset, framing himself as unable to address these matters.
I have to do stuff for myself. No.
I just don't know how to do this stuff. I mean, may I ask, how do I organize? I mean, how do I organize? How do I organize? I mean, how do I do it? I mean, really.
Oh my god.
This is his Hail Mary to try and draw attention from some sort of service or advocate to his case, as he pulls out a toy and attempts to broadcast his more autistic side.
This here is a clicker. I love this toy, and I just don't know why. There's a little toggle thing, a little switch back and forth. There was a little thing that like a joystick thing for Atari, and then I don't know why that sound. I don't even understand this.
In this video, he doesn't outwardly state that he is autistic, but the implication is obviously there. It's clear that
I mean, no, not really. I've never heard
intentionally
autistic people
talk
that way.
actually
It's
jeopardizing
fucking
his
stupid.
chances. He would just exhibit all the symptoms without further
Just
elaboration.
being really fucking stupid.
Okay, look at this, guys. It's a fidget spinner on my Samsung watch. I
Wow.
love the thing. I'm just watching it spin on my camera. It's
That's
like,
so cool, dude. You totally have
it's the
autism. I feel
things
bad for
that
you. I'm gonna give you
spin
money.
that really attract me. I don't know why, guys. I don't know why.
Whoa.
I don't know why. Danny just want to be normal.
I don't know
all day,
why.
you know?
The spontaneity of his feelings in this video is obviously undermined by the
Just
fact
kind of
that
a
he
dumb
recorded
asshole.
it, uploaded it, posted it, and gave it a title, trying to attract attention from anybody relevant.
I want to say, I'm sorry for not. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. I just can't do it.
This is the worst Chris Chan impression I've ever seen.
Why is it hard? Andy not normal. Andy not normal. This. I'm sorry, Andy not normal. Andy just not normal. Andy not normal. I want help. I don't know. I'm struggle. You know, Andy's struggling. Language not hard.
Even from a performative angle, this is really unconvincing, and it's just insulting to people who are autistic.
It is
Yes,
stupid.
autistic people are more likely to be overwhelmed by tasks that others find simple, but they don't turn into a crude caricature of a child and suddenly start exhibiting behaviors that have never been witnessed before in their lifetime. This is not the behavior of someone being overwhelmed by a daily task. This is the behavior of someone who is upset that nobody believes them anymore. Most children would take better care of themselves than this. Nevertheless, whether related to the video or not, he kept persisting, and in June, his case was heard once more. After being contacted by New York's
How do I unlock
Office
the rest
for
of the
People
shit in
with
this game?
Developmental Disabilities, his accommodation case was reopened at the request of the Department of Social Services. A few days after the case was reopened, a note appeared on his documents stating that he was bipolar and that he was currently at a hotel. The case was picked up by an individual who had been calling around to see what could be done for Mr. Ditch, and Andrew posted on his meteorology account that he couldn't wait for a group home to help him with his life skills. He states that he hates the fact that he struggles with sensory overload and meltdowns, and that he can't wait to be an asset and a productive member of society. It seems that his attitude had adjusted significantly since the last time people had attempted to find housing for him. Andrew's two sources of support on this matter was someone by the name of Erica, an advocate who we'll talk about more later, and someone by the name of Merrick, a long-standing support worker for Andrew. Erica seems sympathetic towards Andrew's needs and explains them to the caseworker. Merrick, on the other hand, is more skeptical towards Andrew, sharing that he has a habit of sabotaging attempts to find him group homes, regardless of how they cater to his needs. Interestingly, Erica is under the impression that Merrick is no longer working with Andrew, something that is false, pointing to the idea that someone didn't want this caseworker talking with Merrick and hearing his skepticism. In spite of this, they pressed on, trying to find some sort of suitable housing that would cater to Andrew's very specific needs. Andrew continues to insist that he has the potential to function normally, even sharing a recipe on his Facebook called Coolio's Chicken Marinade Dinner, which I think is just a ripoff of one of Coolio's old cooking recipes.
Lot of diced garlic.
Am I allowed to pimp your house too or no? I'm sorry. All right.
Although this post appeared to show Andrew was cognizant and functional, a few days later,
What was
he
up
was
with
described
Japan's
as
obsession with
completely the
midriff on
opposite.
men
When
in
the
like the
caseworker
early
reached out to him
2000s?
to talk about scheduling an appointment, Andrew very conveniently regressed again, despite remembering to name drop the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. The account notes that Andrew became increasingly loud over the phone and interrupted the caseworker, rejecting any forms of help and again asserting that he was autistic, at which point the organization requested to disengage. Despite wanting Attempting to appear enthusiastic and willing to live in accommodation, Andrew's Goldilocks complex was preventing him from actually making any progress on finding suitable housing. This was likely intentional, moving the goalposts every time someone seemed close to scoring, and fabricating additional issues with tasks that he didn't struggle with before.
You guys don't talk to my one friend and advocate, Joanne. She can tell you guys do not talk to my one friend and advocate, Joanne, that can tell you that me don't want autism.
Me
There's
don't
not
want
a medicine out
autism.
there to help somebody with that. It's something me struggle with all my life with the symptoms.
That's why he wants it, because there is no medicine for it, so he just can use it as a perpetual excuse. These are some weird looking Zoids, what the hell? Like you could unlock these, but they're just not they're not very appealing looking. They look kind of stupid. These are like the hardest to unlock too, so these are supposed to be the real treasures, and they're just not interesting. This one's cool. This would be pretty cool to get. I remember the Death Sword being pretty cool too. Let me see. Yeah, this guy. Cyclops too. Oh, this one's pretty cool looking. Why Cyclops though? Buster Tortoise. Hell yeah, I gotta get one of these. These look fucking cool. Bloody D-Sword. Oh, Bloody Death Storm. Okay. Blitz Tiger. What the fuck is this? This looks terrible. Who designs these? This is the kind of design stuff that I see in like children's Japanese animes. Like they just slap a bunch of random shit together. You know what? I might have underappreciated this design. I don't see any good pictures of it though. No, you know what? This is a good design. It's just the color palette threw me off at first. I understand why they went with this color palette too now, to show it off. But if you had a more subtle color palette, I think it would, like from an immediate glance, look more not interesting, but it wouldn't look so clashy. Definitely want a Koenig Wolf. So I do need to beat both mission modes. Liger 0X. What's the Liger 0X? Oh, this looks dope. Yeah, if I'm gonna get a Liger, might as well get this one. What does the model look like in the game, though? I don't know. Probably looks something like this, though. Lord Gale. Oh, beat battle mode with a mission mode character. So I need to beat the mission mode character or mission mode first in order to have mission mode characters to use. And I can unlock these other Zoids. Beat battle mode. Oh yeah, all the good ones are unlocked that way. Raven Raptor. Proto Saber. This one's cool. I could see having one of these. I like that. I like the way they do in the big old nostrils, or like air intakes in the front. Trinity Tiger. This sounds like AIDS. I bet you this is gonna be AIDS. You know what? It's not bad. Maybe in a different color combination, it's not bad. Ultrasaurus. Okay, yeah, one of those would be cool too. Get the Shield Liger DCSJ. What the fuck does that mean? Oh, what the hell? This dude looks dope. Okay. What? Simply start with a saved game file from Zoids versus on your. Okay. Alright, well, I'm gonna call it a day on this. I feel like I've watched this video before and I've never gone through it, so next time I think we'll start where we're at. We're about an hour in. Alright, I'll see you guys. Bye.